to all of you. Thank you, Dr. Shirley Williams. I have Professor A.P. Pradeep Kumar, Professor Sabu Joseph, Dr. Anil Kumar, Dr. Jaya. I had one or two occasions to visit the Department of Environmental Sciences at University of Kerala. It was almost 10 years back. I think it was for a PhD open defense. And I was fortunate enough to interact with Professor Pradeep Kumar at the School of Environmental Sciences, Mahatma Gandhi University. I was also a research guide there. At the time, Professor Pradeep Kumar was a reader in the School of Environmental Sciences there. At the outset, let me thank Professor Sabu Joseph for giving me this opportunity. Anyway, it was at a very short notice that I had to take up this assignment. But still, I'll try to share some of my thoughts on the career opportunities for environmental science professionals. As all of you know, a master's program in environmental science is truly interdisciplinary in nature. I think it was in the 1980s that such a master's program was conceived in our country, a highly interdisciplinary program. At that time, there were lots of differences of opinion between experts in the area. So we have experts from physical sciences, chemical sciences, as well as biological sciences to teach courses in environmental science. Naturally, we have students from different backgrounds. I think we admit students with background in physical sciences, chemical sciences, as well as life sciences. So we have it is highly multidisciplinary in nature. Again, it is a challenge, in fact, because you get students from different backgrounds, and all these students are expected to have some prerequisites to do a master's program. That's a great challenge as far as a master's program in environmental sciences is concerned. But I think it's almost 40 years since we have introduced this program in our universities and colleges, and this program has evolved a lot. Now, anyway, I have a short presentation to make on the different career opportunities. Anyway, it is I will just share some of the thoughts. Anyway, in our country, the employment market is still emerging, but in other countries, it's well developed. For example, in the Western countries, in the United States of America, or in the European countries, environmental science specialists, environmental management specialists, they get a lot of opportunities, but in our country, it is slowly emerging due to various reasons. Anyway, I will try to give an overview of the opportunities available in our country and make a small presentation. I think this presentation is visible.
Okay, sir. It's visible.
Okay, thank you. So, in short, I will talk about the various career opportunities. Anyway, this thing we have already discussed this, the interdisciplinary nature of a master's program in environmental science. Now, coming to the career opportunities. Anyway, when I discuss the career opportunities, I will try to explain the skills required for each of these avenues, because the environmental science graduate has to develop certain attributes during the course of the program. So that's very important. So this is a list. Anyway, we can add many more to this list. These things come to my mind these things come to my mind first, so that's why I have listed them here. So one important opportunity is in environmental analysis, environmental quality science. So we can call that person an environmental quality scientist or an analyst. Then there are opportunities in consultancy organizations. Environmental consultant position is available. Then environmental education field, environmental officers and managers in organizations, different types of industries. Then nature conservation officers. Nature conservation is an important area of environmental sciences. Then, of course, the position of an environmental scientist with the regulatory agencies. We have different regulatory agencies and government departments. So, of course, an environmental master's, a postgraduate in environmental science will definitely find a place in these organizations. Then, of course, the vast area of teaching and research. Then, to a great extent, in disaster management, provided we develop the required skills. And of course, in some emerging areas like environmental journalism, for example, a person with a master's in environmental science, if she or he has flair for writing, flair to interact with people, then of course it's an emerging area, environmental journalism. So I will try to explain the opportunities available in each of these avenues. First, we will take up environmental quality scientists or analysts. So you may be knowing that these experts, these analysts or scientists, they safeguard all aspects of environmental quality through scientific testing and analysis. So only thing is, this postgraduate should have the skill to carry out and also should have a liking for scientific testing and analysis in a laboratory. So the testing and analysis of all these different environmental components, groundwater, drinking water, surface water, wastewater, ambient air, stag gas, soil, municipal solid waste, hazardous waste, in number of you. So this testing and analysis is very important in environmental sciences. I think all the universities in the country, they offer courses in environmental chemistry as well as environmental analysis. So during the 2 years of the master's program, the students get first-hand experience in these areas, testing and analysis of all these components. And also, we should have some expertise, because now for carrying out the analysis, you need advanced instruments. Now, many of our laboratories are well equipped. All the facilities, advanced instruments are available. So, during the master's program, they should develop a flair for handling these equipments, because handling these equipments, anyway, it's a very sensitive area. So, we have to handle the advanced instruments with a lot of care. So, during the master's program, you can develop that skill. Now, coming to the responsibilities of a quality scientist or an analyst, these are some of the responsibilities, like taking the samples. Maybe the routine sampling may be carried out by technicians or some helpers, but the analyst himself or herself will have to collect the sample in some cases. Then sample preparation, laboratory testing for various chemical and microbiological parameters. For example, in the case of drinking water, the microbiological quality is very important. In our country, we compare the tested values with the IS standard, BIS standard for drinking water quality. So then also they should be able to assess the quality of taste, then clarity, for example, the turbidity of the water. Then monitor, analyze and report on environmental quality data. Not only carry out the analysis, the the scientist or analyst should be able to analyze, make an analysis of the results and report. Then understand the trends and patterns and assess compliance with the regulatory standards. Then of course carry out the daily laboratory quality control checks. So these are some of the responsibilities of an environmental quality scientist or analyst. Of course, some amount of what we call statistical skills. You may have to analyze the data statistically. Now, of course, softwares are available, and also you should have basic knowledge of handling computer softwares. You should be able to use Excel, for example. These spreadsheet softwares are very important for statistical analysis. So you should be so whatever be your background, whether you have a physical science background or chemical science or biological science background, now without these basic skills, statistical skills, then computer skills, these are very important. So during the master's program, you should be able to develop those skills. So of course, then these are the skills required. Of course, there are good laboratory skills, excellent written and verbal communication skills. That is very important. It's very important in any area of employment, in any employment avenue. It will add value to your degree. Excellent written and verbal communication skills, and also the soft skills like interpersonal skills for liaising with customers, regulatory agencies, and all that. Then the ability to analyze and interpret data, that's what I told you earlier. Attention to detail, ability to communicate specialist information to the public, time management, organizational skills. Then effective team working skills, that is also a very important soft skill, be able to work as a team. Then of course the IT skills, information technology skills. Then you should have an awareness of the industry and the environmental regulations. Of course, the various industrial waste treatment methods are covered as part of the curriculum. And also, I think many universities give an introduction about environmental regulations. Environmental regulations, they get amended. So you have to keep abreast of the changes that take place in the environmental regulations in the country. So when you work in India, you should be aware of the changes that are being made in the regulations, because a lot of amendments are made into our environmental regulation. For example, the most important environmental regulation in the country is the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Of course, it has undergone several amendments. And also number of what we call rules, regulations, and notifications based on EP Act, they have come out. So you should be aware of the contents of these environmental regulations. Then, so these are the skills. Then comes environmental consultant. So this is again an evolving area. We have a large number of environmental consultants in the country. So environmental consultants, of course, they need the services of environmental scientists as well as environmental engineers. Maybe for designing the treatment plants and all, they require the support of environmental engineers. Of course, the environmental scientists can also try to develop that skill. So the environmental consultants, what they do is they provide detailed technical assessments and advice for their clients. So they have to make technical assessments. So the role of a consultant, maybe initially you may join as a junior consultant, as an associate consultant initially. Then, so you will involve in providing expert advisory and assessment service to clients, maybe an industry, maybe a local body, or maybe a government department. So the advice may be the advice with respect to minimizing or eliminating environmental damage. So this is the role played by an environmental consultant. So these firms work on a large range of commercial or government contracts addressing a variety of environmental issues. In our country, number of environmental consultancy firms are there, both in the public as well as private sector. Public sector, of course, large public sector undertakings have environmental wing. For example, Engineers India Limited. It's a major public sector engineering consultancy organization. They have a separate environmental wing, and of course they employ environmental scientists as well as engineers. Then in the private sector also, very well established environmental consultants are there. For example, Ion Exchange Limited. Ion Exchange Limited is a, of course, they are manufacturers of environmental, what we call treatment systems. They design and install treatment systems, and at the same time they provide consultancy services. Thermax Limited. Then we have agencies. Then of course the National Environmental Engineering Institute, though it's a research institute, they also do a lot of consultancy activities. Now, as all the CSIR laboratories are supposed to generate their own funds, so NEERI is into consultancy in a big way. Anyway, for the last 30-35 years, they are very active in the consultancy business. So all these agencies, all these consultancy firms offer placement positions to environmental scientists. Then these are the types of environmental consultants. So you may work on a number of environmental issues, because we have number of issues, environmental issues facing the society. Of course, air, land and water contamination. Then how to minimize this contamination, how to minimize the damage on the environment. Then now the focus is on prevention of pollution. We are talking about preventing pollution rather than controlling it. So control of pollution include the installation of very big treatment plants, then operating these treatment plants and all that. So now the focus is on minimizing the pollution and or preventing pollution, so that the contamination of the environmental components is prevented. Then another important area is environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment, now it is mandatory for most of the developmental projects in our country, and many agencies, many consultancy firms, they offer this service, and they need the services of environmental scientists and engineers. So environmental impact assessment is a major area. You can focus on that area. Only thing is you can develop the basic skills during your master's program, and you can make use of it when you select, when you go for a career, when you search for a career, in fact. So environmental impact assessment. Then of course flood risk management. Now again it's a big threat in our country also. Anyway, with issues related to climate change, management of flood risk, many environmental consultants take up such tasks. Then of course waste management and recycling, emissions and climate change, renewable energy opportunities. Now I think there is a big leap in opportunities in the renewable energy sector. A lot of importance is given to renewable energy sources like solar, wind power, geothermal energy, etc. Then another important area is the environmental management system. Of course, it's a very good area of employment. Now, most of the organizations, they are developing and implementing environmental management systems. Most of the big industries, they have already adopted such systems, but it has to be maintained. For example, most of this environmental management system is developed based on this ISO 14001 standard. Now we have the latest standard available with this ISO 14001 2015. So they have to maintain, develop and maintain. So the consultants develop and implement these systems for their clients, and the consultants they require the support of environmental scientists. So that is another area, another type of environmental consultants. These are the responsibilities. They have to, in many cases, as the consultant will have to conduct field surveys. Go to the field, conduct surveys, collect data about levels of pollution or contamination or that particular site, then carry out test-based research, interpreting data. Of course, you may have to use software modeling packages. That's very important. Anyway, when you join a consultant, of course, you will develop that skill. Beforehand, if you can do some courses. Now, as Professor Pradeep Kumar mentioned, we have number of online courses available. MOOC programs, NPTEL courses. So you can undergo some of these courses in emerging areas of environmental model. Then, of course, write reports and share findings with the multidisciplinary colleagues, clients, regulators, etc. Advise on best courses of action based on research findings. Develop conceptual models which involves identification and consideration of potential contamination. These are all responsibilities of environmental consultants. So anyway, this is one of the major what we call employment. I will call it the most important employment avenue for environmental scientists. So many small and big consultants are operating in our country. Even in our state, we have. They may not employ many people, but of course, every consultant needs one or two environmental scientists and engineers. So without their services, they cannot survive, because they have to develop. For example, suppose the environmental consultant is into the design and construction of treatment systems, then of course they need the support of environmental scientists. First of all, collecting data, collecting the samples, then ascertain the characteristics of the wastewater, characteristics of the emissions, then coming out with a proper design for the plant. All these activities, the environmental scientists and engineers can support them. Only thing is, some of these skills, some of the skills required have to be developed during the course of the master's program. Then these are some of the skills required. Of course, some of the skills are already discussed: business skills, communication, presentation skills, IT skills, project management skills. Because sometimes you may have to manage a project, so it calls for project management skills, organization and good time management. Of course, a driving license, because you have to travel quite often. That's also a skill required. So that's about environmental consultant. Then comes another area, another interesting area. That's environmental education offices. There are some organizations in our country which provide opportunities for environmental science postgraduates. For example, I have come across one or two. One is the CPR Environmental Education Center in Chennai. They are into creating environmental awareness among children as well as the public. So these environmental education offices, they promote. Then another example is the very popular Ashoka Trust, Atri in Bangalore. They are into these areas, environmental education. So they provide opportunities for environmental education offices. So they promote conservation and sustainability, and also raise awareness about environmental issues. So these environmental education officers, they have to interact a lot with the public as well as the younger generation. So they have to teach and interpret the natural world in fact. So they may be working in schools or natural reserves, or they may guide, they may lead guided nature walks for visitors, organize events, and all that. They also they may have to train volunteers and community groups involved in environmental conservation projects. So these are the responsibilities of an environmental education officer. Research and develop educational programs and resources. Very important task. You will have to develop the necessary course material. You have to develop educational programs, training programs for schools, adults, families, community groups, etc. Then promote the programs and resources to the target audience through different mechanisms, leaflets, newsletters, websites, and social media. You have to liaise with colleagues, teachers, and community groups, give talks in schools or community groups, organize events, train others, research and collate scientific data. So these are all the responsibilities of an environmental officer. It's a continuous act as a point of contact for teachers, educationalists, and colleagues. Then also they will have to support the organization in the fundraising activities. That's also important. Then evaluate the effectiveness of the program, preparing reports, manage budgets, then of course for advice on education policies and strategies. And of course you should have a lot of commitment and enthusiasm for environmental conservation and sustainable development. And also you should have a flair for interaction with the children as well as the general public, and the ability to communicate effectively in English as well as in the local language. Okay, that is important. Interpersonal skills, organizational and time management skills, IT skills. Okay, so these are all very important for important skills required for an educational environmental education officer. Then comes an environmental manager. Sometimes initially a postgraduate in environmental sciences may be recruited as an environmental officer, for example. Now, anyway, as Professor Pradeep Kumar mentioned, now the public sector undertakings, the central public sector undertakings, they have introduced recruitment programs based on GATE score. So already it is available to various engineering disciplines, then geology, geophysics, as he mentioned. So it may be extended to environmental sciences in future. Now that environmental sciences has been brought to the brought into the purview of GATE, then of course maybe in future recruitment of environmental officers in public sector may be through GATE in environmental sciences. So of course the public sector undertakings also, they also recruit environmental officers. So and over a period of time they will get promoted as environmental managers. So they oversee the performance of the organization in which they work, and they have to make sure that the environmental standards and legislations are met. Again, the environmental officer should have a clear understanding of the various environmental standards and legislations prevailing in the country. Okay, so he or she will have to update his understanding of these standards and legislations. So the first and foremost responsibility of this environmental officer is to ensure that an organization is operating in accordance with the environmental guidelines and targets. Because now everything is now this environmental monitoring systems. Now we have very stringent monitoring systems. For example, most of the industries have been they have been asked to go for online monitoring. They have to monitor the various environmental parameters, and it should be conveyed to the with these what we call the statutory agencies like the Central Pollution Control Board or the State Pollution Control Board online. So the real-time data will be available to the statutory agencies. So this adds a lot of responsibility to the environmental manager. The environmental manager has to coordinate with the what we call the operating crew of that particular plant and see that all the environmental parameters are met, all the environmental standards are met. It is applicable for wastewater discharge as well as environmental emissions. So it is very important. So the role of the environmental manager, it involves examining corporate activities to determine where improvements can be made. So, and also the manager has to suggest avenues for improvement in the organization. So, coming to the responsibilities, develop and implement environmental strategies and action plans. Again, take a lead on sustainable procurement for all goods and services. Coordinate all aspects of pollution control, waste management, recycling, environmental health, conservation, and renewable energy. It's a great responsibility. All aspects of these areas should be coordinated. Then, of course, lead the implementation of environmental policies and practices. Because now most of the organization, as I told you earlier, they have an environmental management system in place. So, as part of the management system, they have an environmental policy. At the top level, there is an environmental policy which is followed by environmental objectives, targets, action plans, practices, and all that. So the environmental manager will have to lead the implementation of the environmental policies and practices. Then, of course, compliance with environmental legislation, then liaison with the different bodies, all statutory agencies and government departments, then audit, analyze and report environmental performance to clients and regulatory bodies. Now, this environmental auditing. Environmental auditors, there are two types of environmental auditors are there. One is environmental auditors who monitor, who certify the environmental management system. They are qualified, what we call internal auditors, and what we call the certified auditors for environmental management system. Then there are consultants who do environmental assessment of environmental performance in an organization. Again, it's an avenue for employment, environmental audit. So the environmental manager will have to ensure that these assessments are carried out to identify the environmental risks so as to reduce the financial cost. So these are all, it's a long list. Develop and implement environment management systems, as I told you earlier. Again, environmental management systems, they focus on what they call continual improvement. Not continuous improvement, it's continual improvement. It's a sort of step-by-step improvement in the organization. So there is always scope for improvement, and the environmental manager has to see that such improvements are made. Then coordinate public hearings and consultations on environmental managers, so the environmental matters, because nowadays the general public is a big stakeholder in any organization. When you have wastewater discharge, air emissions, and other types of waste discharges, the public is also concerned about it. So when they raise concerns, so the environmental manager should be able to talk to those people, convince them regarding the level of pollution that is generated by the organization. And of course, manage relations with the senior management, train staff, participate in education and research. These are all responsibilities of the environment managers. Then comes nature conservation officers, another very different area. Uh, it's again in our country, it provides employment opportunities to postgraduates in environmental science. There are many organizations working in this area. For example, the so-called WWF, World Wildlife Fund for Nature. They provide opportunities to masters in environmental sciences. Then earlier I mentioned about the Ashoka Trust. Similar agencies are there. They are all working towards nature conservation. Of course, there are other NGOs, and then another important organization is the Center for Science and Environment. They are into other areas also. Nature conservation is also one of their focus areas. So the nature conservation offices, they manage and protect the environment, promoting sustainability, they educate others and provide information and analysis. So you will work to protect, manage and enhance the local environment. So the local environment may include the grassland, the forests, coastal areas, mountains, rivers. So you may be assigned a specific task, maybe in forest conservation, maybe in conservation of coastal areas, conservation of rivers. Then maybe depending on the region, you may have to work in marine habitats. So this is another very important area for environmental scientists. And these are the responsibilities: educating the local community, promote and implement the local and national biodiversity action plans in partnership with the statutory and government organizations, contribute to planning and policy development for sustainable management, provide advice to clients, employers, prepare annual management plans on ecological surveys, and so the nature conservation officers will have to carry out a lot of surveys, ecological surveys as part of their job. So they have to make annual management plans, then evaluate and monitor features of nature conservation interest in habitats, maintain and develop your own knowledge and skills. So all these things are important. Of course, you should have sufficient IT skills. Then these are the skills required: good administrative and IT skills, effective communication, the ability to produce literature such as leaflets and all that. Now, anyway, with now you have computer systems, you can do it very effectively. Then be confident in leading. You may have to walk through the forest, so you should be very confident in leading walks. Then have, but this is very important, knowledge of GIS. Now, I think GIS is taught to postgraduate students in of environmental sciences in most of the universities, at least as an elective. So, a basic knowledge of geographical information systems will always come to your hand when you search for a job. So you can even take up a course in GIS, even a book course or a NPTEL course in GIS, and get you, if you can update your knowledge in that area. So GIS is another, so this is another skill required. So remote sensing and GIS. Now again, I think it's taught in, I think in the University of Kerala also. I think it's a part of the curriculum. So this is an important area. For example, the environmental consultants who are into environmental impact assessment, they now make use of GIS and remote sensing techniques very effectively. So you can improve your skills in that area. So now I come back to, I go back to this the list which I showed you earlier. Then the environmental scientists, I think I will take another maximum 10 minutes to finish this presentation. So environmental scientists with regulatory agencies and government departments. So as I mentioned earlier, we have regulatory agencies at different levels. For example, the decision maker in our country is the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. Then comes the Central Pollution Control Board, then the State Pollution Control Boards, then the government departments of environment and climate change. In all these departments, uh, environmental scientists can find employment opportunities. The Ministry of, will start with the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. This ministry basically, it needs the support of scientists and technical experts. So they have a pool of scientists and engineers. Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. So they have that expertise, and they recruit uh, scientists. So they start with, I think they follow the CSIR pattern. They start with the scientist B position. They recruit masters in environmental sciences. The minimum requirement is a masters in environmental sciences. Of course, the PhDs in environmental sciences will be competing for those scientist posts. So they have such positions, environmental scientist positions. Then, of course, the Central Pollution Control Board, they also recruit environmental scientists. Then the State Pollution Control Boards. State Pollution Control Boards, mostly the laboratories. For example, the Kerala State Pollution Control Board, they have their environmental laboratory, central laboratory at Kochi. So it is led by a chief environmental scientist. So they have a hierarchy. I think the analysts, they call it assistant environmental scientist. I think that's the first the entry level post. Then they get promotions, and they can reach up to the level of the chief environmental scientist, and some of the chief environmental scientists have served as the member secretary to the State Pollution Control Board. Such opportunities are there. Then of course the government departments. For example, our own Department of Environment and Climate Change, they recruit environmental scientists. But the number of positions may be less, but of course you can compete for these posts available with statutory agencies and government departments. Uh, then, uh, then of course another major area is teaching and research. Right from teaching at school level to teaching in universities. With a master's degree in environmental science, you can also think of becoming I think that opportunity is there. You can think of becoming a postgraduate teacher in a higher secondary school, teaching environmental sciences. Then at the college level, now most of the universities offer bachelor's and master's programs. Colleges offer bachelor's program in environmental sciences, and most of the universities and colleges offer MSc programs in environmental sciences. So teaching is another avenue. Of course, for teaching now, I think you need a PhD degree. Of course, you will have to continue your education. You have to carry out research in a particular area of specialization and obtain your degree. Then, of course, you can try for. Of course, you can try try overseas also, as Professor Pradeep Kumar mentioned. You have a lot of avenues abroad for research. So you can of course you can search for such opportunities and do research abroad. Then you can try to serve those universities or countries, or come back to our country and join one of the leading institutions here. Then of course disaster management. Disaster management is another area. Now it is gaining a lot of importance in our country. And as part of the environmental sciences curriculum, I think disaster management, the principles of disaster management is also taught. So try to develop that skill. So of course, I think now I think it's an approved qualification. A master's in environmental sciences is a recognized qualification for recruitment to the state disaster management authority. Otherwise, it should be taken up because again, in the case of teaching, I forgot to mention one thing. Now, environmental sciences is a mandatory subject for all the undergraduate programs in the country. Whatever be the program, whether it is arts, science, commerce, engineering, or law, environmental sciences should be taught at the undergraduate level. It is a UGC has made it mandatory, and they have come out with the model syllabus. Several textbooks have come out, but still, this activity, teaching of environmental sciences, is not given to these postgraduates in environmental sciences. But of course, some universities are changing their rules. But generally, generally what I find is that any postgraduate, anyway, they can teach, but since we have a group of specialists, a group of students who are specialized in this area, they should be given the opportunity to teach that subject. And with this course in environmental science to undergraduate students. That is another area of employment. If you have a flair for teaching, it's a very good area. Then disaster management, of course. Then I was talking about environmental journalism. That's again another interesting area. If you have a flair for writing, then if you like interacting with people, then environmental journalism, because lot of issues have to be taken up in the area of environmental protection as well as resource conservation. Many groups now, even many online platforms are there. Then other well-established what we call magazines. For example, the Down to Earth. It's a very pioneer in this area. So such magazines and online platforms, they offer an opportunity. Of course, it's again an evolving area. Maybe you will get more opportunities in the future. So these are some of the things that have come to my mind. Anyway, I don't claim that it's a very exhaustive list of opportunities. Of course, you have to search for these opportunities. As Professor Pradeep Kumar mentioned in the beginning, you have to try, you have to search for the opportunities. The opportunities will not come to you, you have to search and find out. Okay, there are opportunities available, and you have to develop the skills required to meet the challenges or suit those opportunities. So that will equip you well for future. So thank you very much for your patient hearing. Anyway, I'll be very happy to interact with you if time permits. Okay, thank you very much.